All right,
Okay.
I'm gonna go ahead and get us
He doesn't want-
started.
He doesn't want to say hi after all.
Us.
I thought he did because he was playing.
And we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome. Welcome to everyone. We have our usual First UU Church of Indiana folks. We have folks from Ligonier, and then we are hosting, because it's second Sunday, we are hosting the shared pulpit for the greater Pittsburgh area. So I want to give a special thank you and welcome to everyone who is joining us from all around the Pittsburgh area or even beyond. It's wonderful to have you all with us. So we will get started, and our opening hymn will be up in just a moment, and the words will be on your screen. It is "We Are Gathered."
We are gathered in the Spirit, though our bodies are apart, filled with joy and touched with wonder, separate hands but mingled hearts, giving thanks and singing praises for the love that calls us on from our many different places. We are gathered into one. We are gathered in our sorrow. We are gathered in our fear, in our pain and in our worry, in our anger and our tears, as we tend to one another with our gifts and with our care. Our community is strengthened through the faith and hope we share. We are gathered in commitment to a planet that is whole. Works of justice, acts of kindness, bless the world and heal our souls. As our voices join together, may our song of peace resound. May we offer in abundance all the grace that we have found.
Good morning, friends, and welcome to First Unitarian Universalist Church of Indiana, PA. I'm Ruth Thomas, a member of the worship team today, and I am so happy to be welcoming you here to our space. On behalf of the entire congregation, I want to thank you for tuning in. If you are joining us for the first time, we welcome you to our shared online space. We hope that you will subscribe to our YouTube channel for content, which includes meditations, poetry, stories for all ages, and even songs. Search for Pastor Elizabeth Mount on YouTube to find our channel. For many of us, seeing each other's faces is an important part of how we feel connected on Sundays. So if you are comfortable, go ahead and leave your video on so that people can see you and enjoy this form of community. However, if you don't have a camera, or you're afraid that worship at home may make you feel too comfortable and you'll forget that you're visible on camera, you can leave the video off and no one will mind. One other feature of Zoom that I want to note, you'll see the little speech bubble in the middle of your toolbar down there, just below the video screen. It's labeled chat, and you can use that feature for our greetings, chalice lighting ritual, and for joys and concerns during those parts of the service. The First Unitarian Universalist Church of Indiana, PA, is a member congregation of the Unitarian Universalist Association of Self-Governing Congregations, united in a web of mutuality that creates our denomination. We have neither creed nor doctrine, but rather teach that all individuals have both the right and the responsibility to discern and follow their own spiritual path. We come together to support and assist each other on our personal journeys and to build our beloved community together. I invite you to stay after the service for conversation. We will open up the microphones for a coffee hour and place you in a small group breakout rooms so that people can check in about how they are feeling and what's on their hearts and minds. Now I invite you to take a breath and settle yourself into the spirit of worship.
It has been one full year. 1 year since we shut down church buildings for just a few weeks. 1 year all across the country. From spring to spring, the wheel has turned, full moon chasing full moon, for 12 months, 52 weeks, 365 days. For those lovers of musicals, 525,600 minutes. 1 year it has been since the last of so many things. The last meal in a sit-down restaurant, the last flight on an airplane, the last religious exploration class in person, in classrooms, the last live music concert, perhaps the last hug from a friend, the last time we went shopping and didn't worry about a shortage on any particular thing, the last time we held hands and sang together. What last events did you notice? What last events did you miss? If there are any in particular you are remembering now, please feel welcome to type them in our chat. Still, the wheel has turned. Full moon chasing full moon. For 12 months, 52 weeks, 365 days, 525,600 minutes. And it has been one full year. So much has happened. Some of us learned new skills in baking, crafting, knitting, woodwork. Some of us went to protests, got out the vote even when we couldn't get out of the house. Some learned just how hard it is to homeschool, learned new appreciation for teachers. Some learned the persistence of calling the unemployment hotline again and again and again for weeks on end until they finally got benefits or didn't. Some learned how depression steals your energy and creative passion. Some learned how anxiety can keep you up at night for months, not merely days. It has been a full year. Onward, the wheel has turned. Full moon chasing full moon, 12 months, 52 weeks, 365 days, 525,600 minutes, and nearly as many deaths. For today we mark an unfamiliar turning. New Year's Eve came last March 12th for our congregation, had we only known it. We're counting a new year that dawned on March 13th as students went home for a spring break that turned out to be the end of a term. On March 15th, we had an online worship service, just this once or maybe for a few weeks, that would turn into a full year of Zoom online, a shared pulpit, new models. And so we count. We count the days in cases of illness reported, in deaths and infection rates, for some, the hours and minutes since we last touched another person. For others, the seconds and nanoseconds since your kids last touched you. In jobs lost, in stock prices rising, in votes and vaccines. We measured doses in arms. We measured a year together at a distance. For the wheel has turned, full moon chasing full moon, for 12 months, 52 weeks, 365 days, and 525,600 minutes. We measure, and it has been a full year. So welcome, and let us worship together. If you have a chalice or a candle, you may wish to light its flame now. And you can type, "The flame is lit," and where you are joining us from in your chat bar as Liz Cook speaks our chalice lighting words.
Blessed is the fire that burns deep in the soul. It is the flame of the human spirit, touched into being by the mystery of life. It is the fire of reason, the fire of compassion, the fire of community, the fire of justice, the fire of faith. It is the fire of love burning deep in the human heart, the divine glow in every life. Blessed is the fire.
And our hymn, Here Together.
We are here together in this holy moment, and we're grateful for the winding road that brought us to this place. We are here together in this holy moment, and we're grateful for the winding road that brought us to this place.
And now, our time for all ages. Alexander and the terrible, horrible, no good, very bad year. An adaptation of a book by Judith Bjorst.
This is Alexander and the terrible, horrible, no good, very bad year. Our president got impeached, and a pandemic shut everything down, and the economy tanked, and even though we're in quarantine, my room was a mess because my parents were too busy watching a documentary about tiger abuse to clean it. I could tell it was going to be a terrible, horrible, no good, very bad year. There was no good food left at the grocery, so Mom bought a whole pallet of breakfast cereal from Costco that we ate for every meal. I hate Costco breakfast cereal. Guess whose mom forgot to stockpile toilet paper? I had to go everywhere with my quarantine pod. I told Mom I was tired of doing everything with the same 4 people. Mom said I was lucky to see other people at all. I could tell it was going to be a terrible, horrible, no good, very bad year. I went to school 2 days a week and did the rest at home, but my teacher was so checked out from teaching Zoom and teaching for real that some days we'd just doodle. She said it was all we had the budget for. It was the hottest year ever, and Australia was all on fire, and California too, and the streets were full of protesters, and England left the EU, and there was a Space Force TV show and a real Space Force, and they both seemed like jokes, but neither one was funny. I could tell it was going to be a terrible, horrible, no good, very bad year. I wanted to go for a walk downtown, but I kept getting blocked by anti-maskers and rally-goers. I hope you sit on a murder hornet, I told them. I can't eat at my favorite restaurant anymore, but I can't eat my sack lunch either because I'd have to take my mask off. My sandwich always tastes like hand sanitizer anyway. Mom took us all to the doctor's office. But he said COVID shots are only for certain grown-ups, and he said a lot of grown-ups don't even want theirs. But he said I couldn't have theirs either. Then we had this really awful election, and the guy who lost kept lying about it, so a bunch of angry people attacked the Capitol, and I got knocked down and hurt my foot. When I tried to get the angry people to stop, they all said I was a snowflake. They said I was trying to cancel culture their free speech. The president got impeached again, but it didn't seem to change anything. Some kids on Zoom We're talking about this big Mexico wall that's supposed to make America great again. I told them that people in Mexico have shovels and hammers and power saws and ladders and planes and boats and drones, and most of them come through the checkpoints anyway. But they didn't care. I tried to talk to my dad about it in his home office, but I accidentally Zoom bombed him, whatever that means. He said he just lost all the Bitcoin he made on GameStop to a Russian ransomware attack, whatever that means. He said he just wanted to be left alone to stream YouTube listicles and TikTok Baby Yoda memes, whatever that means. For dinner, Mom let us order from DoorDash, but they forgot my avocado toast. I had to share my brother's quinoa salad. I hate quinoa salad. Then a winter storm hit, and the gas line to the water heater broke, and my bath water was cold. And I put on my railroad pajamas that I love, but I realized I don't really like them now that they've become my normal everyday clothes. I heard there was a coup in Myanmar, and internment camps in China, and people getting poisoned in Russia, and a Supreme Court justice and a bunch of other celebrities died. But mostly, I just missed friends, and birthday cakes, and swimming pools, and even going to church. It's been a terrible, horrible, no good, very bad year. My mom says, some years are like that. But if we keep trying and don't give up, things will get better next year.
Some years are like that. It has been a very difficult year for many of us. And yet, we know that to be together is important. It makes a difference. So, with that, let us sing Our World is One World. And remember that even as we are apart, even when things are terrible and horrible and no good and very bad, our actions are part of a larger web.
Our world is one world. What touches one affects us all. The seas that wash us round about, the clouds that cover us, the rains that fall. Our world is one world. The thoughts we think affect us all. The way we build our attitudes with love or hate we make a bridge or wall. Our world is one world. Its ways of wealth affect us all. The way we spend, the way we share, rule all the rich or poor, who stand or fall. Our world is one world, just like a ship that bears us all, where fear and greed make many woes, but where our hearts can hear a different call.
Let us take a moment now to reaffirm that connection to one another by passing the peace. This is a moment to share a blessing for one another. You might say, Peace be with you. Namaste. Shalom. Salam alaikum. Bright blessings, or blessed be. Many blessings of health and peace be with you all. Our centering words are from the Reverend Joanna Lubkin. As we commemorate 1 year apart, Holy One, as of this week, we have spent 1 full year apart online. We pause this moment to name and lift up the jumble of feelings we hold. We grieve for those we have lost, whether COVID took them or whether the pandemic took away our chances to be together, to mourn their loss. We say their names now, those beloved friends and family members that we have lost since March. You might say their name aloud to yourself or write their name in the chat as we pause for a moment to hold their memories in our hearts. We hold all these named and unnamed and carry with us their blessed memory. And we hold in our prayers as well all those recovering from COVID, those dealing with the lasting effects of this illness. We hold in love those who have lost work during this pandemic, whose schooling has been interrupted, those who struggle to parent while working from home, frontline workers at risk every day, those feeling the ache of isolation and loneliness. We think of all the occasions, the holidays and celebrations missed. We remember the last time we sang together in our sanctuaries, not knowing how long it would be until we could do so safely again. We give thanks for the gifts we have found amid loss and distance. This community, this wider community, has been creative, courageous, and caring. We have found ways to stay connected and to grow new connections, finding new ways of gathering, steadfastly reaching out to one another. And we give thanks for the ways we have been able to grow the boundaries of our community beyond geography, welcoming those dear ones from far away. We give thanks for the human miracle of 3 vaccines making their way to us in less than a year, each a cause for celebration and relief. Holy One, source of resilience. Help us to hold on through whatever yet may come. May we be resolute of heart as we mask up and continue to care for one another by keeping our distance yet a few months more, knowing it to be an act of love. May we be open and curious about the possibilities unfolding before us, seeing the ways that we can get not back to normal, but forward to better. So in the spirit of prayer and meditation and love, let us be together this day. During this moment, if you have joys or sorrows to share, you may type them in the chat bar during these chimes that follow. May we remember for all those whose lives were lost. May we remember the hardship of all those who became ill, all those perhaps still dealing with those effects of COVID. May we hold in our hearts the hardships, shared and unshared. When the weight of the world overwhelms us, when we face challenges and difficulties of life, when we worry and feel small or weak, alone or afraid, May this be a time that we lean into that source of all things, into the power and strength of our gathered communities. May we hold up the joy, the anticipation, the wonder, and the new hope that some are finding this spring as vaccinations spread and the possibilities of regathering begin to rise in our consciousness. In this time, we hold space for all that is. So let us return to the breath of life. Let us return to the power and simplicity of this moment. Let us return to the earth which grounds us and the sky that lifts us up. Let us return to the love and support which surrounds us, and remember the good within every single one of the people gathered here. Let us rest in all that is possible when we offer up the good gifts of our hearts to the service of one another, to the common good, to the community of beloveds. It is good to be together. Blessed be, and amen. So here we are, 1 year later. There is so much to say about the year that has passed. And so I've worked with several other ministers from around the country, creating shared reflections and a sampling of all the ways that 1 year later, 1 year after the world changed, we are noticing hardship, pain, and growth, and renewal, and all those mixed up things that are sadness and possibility and hope and gladness all mingled together. So I invite you to listen deeply to the many ways in which our communities are growing and stretching and loving in the year that has passed and in readiness for the year yet to come.
One year later. 1 year later, and I remember that week, that last week, 1 year ago, when we tried so hard to figure out what to do. And then that decision, no more worship in the sanctuary. How do we Zoom? What does this mean? We stood on a great empty plain stretching far out in front of us, covered by thick fog. I'd like to say that fog is lifted. The plain has been explored, that we have made a perfect home here, but still we struggle to adapt to this new way of being. But let's just take take a moment to acknowledge, even tentatively to celebrate, because it is, after all, 1 year later. And the sun still rises and the stars still shine, and you and I wake up each morning and mourn the loss of some and celebrate across the miles the presence of others. 1 year later, we'll never forget that week, that realization dawning upon us all that change was before us, that the unknown stretched out beyond where we could see. We'll never forget that. But let's take a moment to hold the knowledge that it is indeed 1 year later. 1 year later, and we are here, not on the other side of the unknown, but somewhere in a place called resilience, called discovery, called life.
One year later. Wow. Feels like an eternity. 1 year later, I've discovered how much I love people. My friends, my family, this congregation, how much capacity I have to love the whole of humanity and to recognize all the ways in which we are deeply connected and all the ways in which we need one another. I've discovered how deeply I can love myself. I've rediscovered love for nature and the beauty of our earth. 1 year later, I am grateful for all the ways people have been reaching out inside our community and beyond our walls to the wider community in times of extraordinary loss and suffering and injustice and violence. We're reaching out. We're allowing ourselves to be cracked open, our hearts to be broken into pieces only so we can reassemble them in new ways. I've been amazed at how adaptive we've been, how willing we've been to try new things, how gracious we are learning to be with one another when new things don't go well. 1 year later, I'm still navigating, balancing a life when every single family member is at home all the time, with 2 kids in online school and 2 working parents, managing the gifts and challenges of virtual ministry and virtual worship, and being bolstered by all that is possible in this space, by the way in which we have seen growth and deeper connection that we haven't experienced before. 1 year later, I am grateful for this faith, for the way that it has moved alongside all of us and supported us with resources, with tools, and with the connection to one another, reminding us that we are greater than our individual congregations and the sum of our parts. I am grateful for all of the beautiful worship services we've been able to create and we've been able to experience that have been created by others. We are an imaginative, innovative, talented crew of people in this faith tradition, and I can't wait to see what comes next. And 1 year later, I have loved wearing the same pair of comfy yoga pants and slippers almost every day, even on Sundays.
A snapshot of ministry over the past year. 1 year later, for our world and our masks feel like a part of our bodies, like an arm or a foot, something we cannot imagine leaving the house without. If you were like me a year ago, you were constantly halfway to the grocery store or gas station before having to turn around, remembering you'd forgotten your mask. And now they're always either in our hands or pockets, always within arm's reach in every direction. These masks serve as physical reminders for us, a way to say, I may not know you, but I care about you. I need you to survive. 1 year later for our community, and we stand on the precipice of extraordinary change. A year ago, we at Georgia Mountains Unitarian Universalist Church were about to kick off our capital campaign to build a church of our dreams on the property we had just purchased. We had to postpone the campaign for 8 months, a difficult decision, but one that placed the needs of our community at the forefront. And now we may be a little behind our timeline, but we excitedly look towards that day next year when we can all be together again, this time inside our new building. 1 year later for me, and creation has become linked to isolation. I have created an entirely new human being, welcomed them into this world away from you. Those who have loved my children like their own, have rocked them to sleep on Sunday mornings, have ensured their souls were nurtured each week by a community of dear ones. My spirit aches to co-create music, services, and a life of fullness with you all in the same room. My spirit aches to link creation and connection again. 1 year later, and there have been innumerable highs and lows, challenges and victories, losses and gains. But here we are, shots in many of our arms, and we can see the light at the end of the tunnel 1 year later.
1 year later, I am weighed down by grief, by previously unimaginable loss of life, by gross injustice and unprecedented suffering. 1 year later, I am lifted up by the thousands of acts of kindness I have witnessed and millions more that I will never know about. 1 year later, I am shocked by the immensity of the human capacity for suffering. And I am heartened by the enormity of human compassion. 1 year later, I am more aware of just how damaging isolation can be, and just how deep the longing for connection runs. 1 year later, I am reminded of the story about how to find out whether what you need in a plank is a nail or a screw. Drive the nail in, the story goes. If it splits the plank, you know you need the screw. 1 year later, the plank is split and splintered as we put down the hammer and reach for the screwdriver, hoping and praying that it is not too late to begin again, hoping and praying that what's left is enough, hoping and praying that we will find a way to bind up the brokenhearted, to release the prisoners, to bring good news to the oppressed. 1 year later, bone weary and tempest tossed, shaken and stirred, distraught and despairing, I am somehow more than ever convinced of the life-giving power of community. For it is through the sweet, sustaining power of we that we discover again and again how blessings arise from the ashes and how strength is forged in flames. 1 year later, I say to you, to all, face what is real, grieve what is lost, and turn toward hope whenever and however you can. Peace.
1 year later, and so much has changed. In this one year, many of us re-evaluated our lives and the world around us. Many of us also re-evaluated our relationships. We found new ways to connect with each other while keeping each other safe. We managed to come together as communities, supporting each other through these challenging times. We reset priorities, we were inventive, and suddenly we were able to include not only those who are near, but also those far away, yet close to our hearts. But there was also grief. Grief for those we lost to COVID. There was isolation and loneliness, longing to hug loved ones, or even just longing for any human touch at all. 1 year later, not all relationships survived the sudden constant closeness if we lived together, or the sudden distance if we didn't. What we're left with, what has become crystal clear, is the fact that we need one another. And we need to protect one another. We are truly interconnected in our joy and our suffering, not just during a pandemic, but always. Because we are all that we have.
1 year later. There's so much to say. I've learned that sometimes the most hopeful thing to do is to show up for other people, even when your heart is breaking, but you're not sure what your next step is. I've learned that the process and the journey of faith takes all of the human experience. And that includes grief too. I've learned that grief, there's never too much of it. It shows us the depth of our love, even if the world wants us to move on. I've learned that even with incredible, inhumane realities among us, when things look bleak, human beings continue to show up for each other, to offer grace and love and mercy. I've learned how important compassion to ourselves and each other is. The compassion is not optional. It's what we all need to survive. I've learned that it's amazing all the things we can adapt to, how much we've changed and learned and grown together. I've learned how little I need to live. And I've learned just how much my life and my life's work exists only because of the precious work of community. My congregation has shown me what community can really look like, how to keep connected in times like these. And they have humbled me in more ways than I will ever have words for. Community and compassion. These are what keep us human, loving, and alive.
1 year later, I don't think many of us could have imagined living life this way for an entire year. Over the past year, we have reimagined almost every aspect of our lives, and particularly, we've reimagined together what it means to be in community, what it means to be in religious community with one another. It is something to celebrate that we are here and we are gathered, that we have adapted in ways we might never have dreamed possible. And it is something to mourn that we are not all here and we are not all gathered. Some congregations have lost many members in the last 12 months to the pandemic or to other causes. Some congregations have lost few, but all of us have been touched by loss. Family, friends, loved ones who are no longer with us the way we wish they could be. I am hopeful for a return to in-person gatherings, and I am hopeful that we remember how precious sharing space can be, how important a handshake, a hug, and singing together are. 1 year later, we know better the value of community because we've not let it go. We've made it as central to our lives as ever before.
1 year later, I love Maury Kettle more than I ever thought I could, for this has been a year when we need whatever warmth we can find. Need the reminder that we can find fellowship and help fill each other's cups in new and different ways. 1 year later, I have learned to go ahead and eat the chocolates I've saved in the kitchen cupboard, to go ahead and say the loving words on my heart and my mind, to watch whatever sings my heart quietly to rest, to not hoard joy but bring it out as I find it. 1 year later, I am more grateful than ever before for the sweet tang of winter oranges, shared now with my sweet 13-month-old as he sits next to me in his tall chair. Reminder that there is still so much beauty in the world, that somewhere still there are orange trees, green and fruitful. 1 year later, I rest in the comfort of my grandmother's chair. Let grief move through me without rushing away from it into busyness or distraction. Let the sadness and the worry travel through my life as I move through stillness and sorrow. 1 year later, I am dancing in the living room to songs my friends and dear ones have sung, holding on to love and joy and the practice of hope on days both dreary and bright with promise.
1 year later, what I know more than anything is the need for religious community, the purpose and power of religious community, and the strength of religious community. 1 year later, I've seen how we need this religious community and this faith more than I ever understood before. We've needed each other as we mourned the loss of life and the loss of connections, as we endured hardships, financial and personal. We've needed each other in practical ways, from our mask makers who supplied each other to those helping each other find vaccine appointments now. And we've needed this faith to give us strength, courage, and keep us connected to the force of love. 1 year later, I've seen the purpose and power of religious community and this faith. I've talked for decades about how churches can work together more, and this year we've worshiped with others, learned with others, done justice with others like never before. We've become more connected to those around us and to Unitarian Universalism. And within our own community, we've pulled together to make things possible that we would have never dreamed we'd be doing a year ago, and to envision from this time forward what might be possible in the future. 1 year later, I know the strength of religious community. I know that our building doesn't define us, beautiful though it may be, and that the church can withstand enormous hardship, that the religious community will find strength and resilience from new places, surprising places. I know we will find ways, we will always find ways to lift our voices together, to worship together, to do justice together, and to care for one another. Beloveds, 1 year later, this I know, we together will bend the arc of justice towards love. May it be so.
1 year later, we may not be seeing each other in person, but we are connected to people across the country. We have worship and classes attended by people from multiple states and congregations beyond our own. We feel more connected to our Pittsburgh cluster, even as we lament the loss of spending time in our building and sharing our potluck food with one another. 1 year later, we are grateful and glad that the First UU Church of Indiana, Pennsylvania is part of the shared pulpit for worship and partnering to share classes with fellowships in Florence, Oregon, and Ligonier, Pennsylvania. It may not be perfect. We certainly don't want to be an online-only church forever. But 1 year later, we can see changes we've made. A spark of hope kindled into flame, a possibility for a thriving future. We notice increased accessibility and love beyond boundaries. We see inspiration, care, and action in line with our values. 1 year later, here we are.
One year later, I take nothing for granted. Not you, not me, not connection, not our determination to keep connected. Not time, whether there's too much of it or not enough. Not music, not singing, not the breath that makes the singing. Not the need to be together, nor the need for time alone. Not the beauty at hand in the smallest things just waiting for us to notice. Not the noticing, the power to let in those things we usually move too fast to find. Not the learning that keeps trying to find me. If only I can be still in my body, my mind, or my spirit. 1 year later, I take nothing for granted. Not you, not me, not connection, not singing, not breath, not time, not beauty, not learning, not noticing, not love. Not now, and not ever again.
One year later. So it is. So it goes. Things have changed, so much has shifted. Yet here we are with hope and love. And now we come to that time in our service where we accept our morning offering. I'll let our congregant Lee Hendricks tell you about our offering for this month. We'll take just a moment to breathe while I get that queued up more correctly, because we are on the wrong page. So I invite you to take a moment to breathe with me. Because 1 year later, we have not smoothed out every technical difficulty that there could be. And so
at the First UU Church of Indiana, we share the plate by giving a portion of every week's donations to an organization outside of the church. This is part of our congregation's mission to promote compassionate and responsible thought and action in the world by giving back to the community around us every week. So when you give this morning, know that you are making an impact not only for this congregation, but also in the wider community through our shared giving. You are welcome to give by PayPal by sending a donation to office@firstuu-indianapa.org, or you can send an email to that same address to find out how to set up a bank transfer or make a donation by cash or check with Holly, our office administrator. I'm really excited to share with you that this month our Share the Plate recipient is Sisters PGH. They are the transgender-centered drop-in space, resource provider, and shelter transitioning program based in Pittsburgh, offering outreach, accurate transgender education, trans inclusion training, advocacy, and emergency housing and shelter for transgender people of Pittsburgh. And they've been around for a couple of years and also have had a hand in organizing some like alternative pride events called People's Pride. That's really sort of an exciting alternative to some of what has gotten really corporate. And giving to Sisters PGH supports both our GLBTQ+ welcoming and anti-racism work by redistributing funds to an organization led by and primarily serving Black trans women. And that feels like a really important thing for us to think about and for us to do as a community. And it is part of donating to an LGBTQ+ cause or organization is part of our ongoing commitment as a welcoming congregation. And so please give as you are able to the work of this church within and beyond our walls as we share in singing our offertory hymn.
Thank you so much. As said before, if you would like to give office@FirstUU, that's FIRSTUU -IndianaPA.org, and you are welcome to give.
525,600 TikToks, 525,000 Karens, oh dear, 525,600 Zoom calls. How do you measure pandemic for a year?
In missed flights, in protests, in Trump fights, in cups of Fauci,
In face shields, in masks, in distance, in stress. 525,600 headaches. How do you measure a year of this mess?
How about love? How about love? How about love? Measuring love. Seasons of love. Seasons of love.
It has been a year when everything changed, a year and things have been hard, filled with grief, and a year in which things have changed in miraculous ways. We have responded with generosity, with creativity, with love. We have reached out across the gulf of physical distance and built bridges that are not only for this time, but to sustain us into the future. In this moment, in every moment, may we remember our strength. May we lift up the power of love, and may we give thanks for science and compassion and a willingness to stay the course has meant that we now have a possibility of regathering this spring and into the summer. I am so joyful that through the hard work of our board, we will be able to begin gathering in person on the grounds. We are thankful that this community has stayed so connected that we do not worry whether anyone will return. This is something to celebrate in the power of each and every person's gift of love to Unitarian Universalism and to a better world. So blessed be, and let us hear now our closing hymn by Dan Schatz, written especially for this moment. It is called Carry the Flame.
Toughest time you ever knew, the only thing that you could do was carry the flame. Sickness spreading through the land, you held your spirit in your hands and carried the flame. When storms and sorrows gathered round, you raised your head and you stayed your ground. Breathe the flame. Through endless days of the hardest living, you kept on loving, kept on giving, you kept on and carried the flame. Carry the flame, raise it high, send its beacon through the sky, keep it strong and shining through the pain. Let it rise and let it grow. Let it light the world, you know, let it glow. When the day is done at last, we take on the spark you've passed. The flame, from hand to hand, we send it on, the kindling hope of a rising dawn in a song. Carry the flame, carry the flame, raise it high, send its beacon through the sky, keep it strong and shining through the pain. Let it rise and let it grow. Let it light the world, you know, let it glow. Carry the flame. Our nurses, doctors, teachers, we are children, parents, preachers, and we all carry the flame. We are scientists and cargo packers, farmers, singers, grocery stackers, young and old. We carry the flame. Carry the flame, raise it high, send its beacon through the sky, keep it strong and shining through the pain. Let it rise and let it grow. Let it light the world, you know, let it glow. Carry the flame. Let it glow. Carry the flame.
And now, let us extinguish our chalice together.
We extinguish our chalice flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Namaste.
And so, may we go in hope and peace and thanks for the love we have shared. Thank you all for being with us today. We know, despite everything, even when life has been so difficult, we carry on, carrying that flame and bringing hope and joy back to our hearts each week as we are together in blessed community. Peace be with you. If you are from Ligonier, let me know in the chat. I can divide you into a special breakout room. If you are from a non-Indiana or Ligonier congregation, you are very welcome to stay and be part of our coffee hour today, or to return to your own congregations for their community time. Blessed be one and all.